Good morning. Displayed a list of topics which we have chosen for today's discussion. The first article of the day says that in a major development, the framework agreement on establishment of the International Big Cat Alliance has officially come into force. So, from 23rd January of 2025, the IBCA and its secretariat have become a full-fledged treaty-based intergovernmental international organization and international legal entity. In this context, we'll talk about the International Big Cat Alliance. In short, we call it the IBCA. See, it was launched by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on 9th April of 2023 during the event commemorating the 50 years of Project Tiger. Know that the headquarters of IBCA is in India. Now, what is the purpose and what is about the purpose and membership of the organization? See, the main objective of this is the global conservation of 7 big cats, which are the tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, cheetah, jaguar, and puma. Significantly, the cats found in India are tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, and cheetah, whereas puma and jaguar are not found in India. Talking about its membership, see, we have range countries where the nations where these species are naturally exist, and also we have the non-range countries which includes the nations historically without these species but interested in the conservation efforts. Then, with respect to the global governance and implementation, see, it was established by the Government of India and know that the National Tiger Conservation Authority under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the nodal organization of this alliance. Now, what about the key functions and goals? See, the first one is collaboration and knowledge sharing, where it facilitates global cooperation in big cat conservation, consolidates successful conservation practices and expertise, and lastly, provides access to central repository of technical knowledge and funding. Secondly, with respect to strengthening the conservation efforts, see, it supports species-specific intergovernmental platforms and networks. Then it also aims to halt the population decline and reverse the negative trends. Then what about the climate and ecological security? So it contributes to the securing the ecological future and also helps mitigate adverse effects of climate change. Now, why is this alliance significant? See, IBCA serves as a unified global effort to conserve big cats through policy coordination, funding, and capacity building. Furthermore, it enhances the synergies among nations to protect these species and their habitats. The second article of the day says that Union Minister Nitin Gadkari said that India will achieve its target of 20% ethanol blending of petrol in the next 2 months, at least a year ahead of what was originally planned. Furthermore, this would entail the production of nearly 1100 crore liters of fuel ethanol in 1 year. In this context, we'll talk about the ethanol blending program. See, the government has implemented various initiatives since the year 2014 to enhance the ethanol blending with petrol. So the petrol blended with 10% ethanol is sold by the oil marketing companies. Now, what are the various government interventions to boost the ethanol production since 2014? Firstly, the amendment to the Industries Development and Regulation Act of 1951, which gives exclusive control of denatured ethanol to the central government for smooth movement across India. And secondly, reduced GST on ethanol for ethanol blending program for 18% to 5%. Then differential pricing of ethanol based on raw materials used. Also, we had extension of the ethanol blending program to all of India except Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep from 1st April of 2019. Lastly, interest subvention scheme to boost ethanol production capacity by the Department of Food and Public Distribution. Now, how was this expansion of ethanol feedstock done? See, apart from the C-heavy molasses, new raw materials were approved for ethanol production, which are 8-heavy molasses, sugarcane juice, sugar syrup, damaged food grains, and differentiated ethanol pricing introduced based on raw materials used. Now, these are the blending targets with respect to ethanol. The third article of the day says that the Supreme Court made it clear to the Union government and states on Monday that no steps will be taken by them to reduce the forest land unless the compensatory land is provided by them for the afforestation. In this context, we'll first talk about the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, and then we'll talk about the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023. See, firstly, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 was enacted to regulate deforestation, oversee forest product transportation, and then impose duties on timber and produce. Know that the prior approval from the central government is required to divert forest land for non-forest purposes. Furthermore, it covers the forest lands recognized by the Indian Forest Act of 1927 or state records since 1980. Now, moving on to talk about the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023. See, there are three key objectives to it. Firstly, it clarifies the definition of forest land and scope under the Act. Secondly, it exempts certain categories of land from the Act's provisions. And lastly, it maintains the Supreme Court's traditional approach to forest governance unaffected by the amendments. Now, the Supreme Court directive was that the final approval required from the court for the creation of zoos or safaris by any government or authority. Now, if we have to look at some of the major provisions of the Act, firstly, it applies to the lands notified as forest in any government record on or after 1980. Secondly, the Act does not apply if, firstly, the forest land was legally diverted between 1980 and 1996 for non-forest use. Secondly, the forest land is within the 100 kilometers of international borders and used for strategic projects of national importance. Thirdly, the land, which is of the size of 5 to 10 hectares, is used for security and defense projects. And lastly, connectivity infrastructure up to 0.1 hectares along the roads and railways. Furthermore, the permitted activities in forests are establishment of checkposts, fencing and bridges, and then running zoos, safaris and ecotourism facilities. The fourth article of the day says that India's private sector manufacturing activity rebounded to a 6-month high in January after hitting a 1-year low in December, thanks to the exports recording the best month in almost 14 years, even as the factory order books expanded at the fastest pace since July 2024, as per private index based on a survey of 400 odd firms. In this context, we'll talk about the Purchasing Managers Index. See, it is a survey-based measure that asks respondents about the changes in their perception about the key business variables as compared with the previous month. Significantly, the purpose of this PMI is to provide information about the current and future business conditions to company decision makers, analysts, and investors. So, there are two types of PMI. So, the first one is the manufacturing PMI, and the second one is the services PMI. Know that it is calculated separately for the manufacturing and services sectors, and then a composite index is also constructed. Notably, the PMI is a number from 0 to 50. So, a print above 50 means expansion, while a score below that denotes contraction, but a reading at 50 indicates no change. So, if the PMI of the previous month is higher than the PMI of the current month, it represents that the economy is contracting. So it usually is released at the start of every month. It is therefore considered a good leading indicator of the economic activity. Furthermore, the PMI is compiled by the ISH market for more than 40 economies worldwide. Know that this ISH market is a global leader in information analytics and business solutions for major industries and markets that drive the economies worldwide. But this ISH market is part of S&P Global. So these are the key highlights with respect to the PMI. The next article says that Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, while presenting the Union budget on Saturday, announced a 5-year mission to facilitate significant improvements in productivity and sustainability of cotton farming and promote extra long staple cotton varieties. In this context, we will talk about the cotton and then we'll see what is extra long staple cotton. See, cotton is one of the most important commercial crops cultivated in India and accounts for around 25% of the total global cotton production. Know that it is termed as white gold. So in India, around 67% of India's cotton is grown on rain-fed areas and 33% on irrigated areas. Furthermore, it is a kharif crop that requires 6 to 8 months of mature. Know that the kharif crops are the crops that are sown in the rainy season from June to September. Furthermore, some of the major kharif crops are paddy, maize, millets, pulses, oilseeds, cotton, and sugarcane. Now, what is this extra long staple cotton? See, if you have to classify the cotton, then we can say based on the fiber length, we can classify it. So the first one is short staple cotton, second one is medium staple cotton, third one is the extra long staple cotton, and the measurements of the length are displayed here. So, with respect to global and Indian production, some of the major extra long staple cotton producing countries are China, Egypt, Australia, and Peru. But if you have to talk specifically in the context of India, it is grown in the Atpadi of Maharashtra and Coimbatore of Tamil Nadu. Know that it is used to enhance the fabric quality in premium textile brands. The next article says that while imposing tariffs on the goods from China, Canada, and Mexico on Saturday, the United States government cited the extraordinary threat posed by the illegal aliens and drugs, including the deadly fentanyl. From many years now, the US has raised concerns over the inflow of fentanyl, primarily targeting the Mexico for sending it over the border and China for producing its precursor chemicals. In this context, we'll talk about what is fentanyl. See, it is a synthetic opioid 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin. Know that the effects are pain relief, euphoria, and high addiction potential. But there is overdose risk associated too. So it can be fatal, contributing to the ongoing opioid epidemic in the US. But what was the impact of it? See, since 2013, synthetic opioid related deaths have surged in the US. Just in 2021, drug overdose deaths were 6 times higher than in the year 1999. The next article says that days ahead of the Reserve Bank of India's monetary policy review later this week, the rupee plummeted below the 87 mark against the US dollar, sparking concerns about the possibility of a surge in the imported inflation and the country's import bill. In this context, we'll talk about the rupee's depreciation, the causes for it, and the reasons behind the rupee downfall right now. See, usually the currency value in the forex market is determined by demand and supply dynamics. So, a currency depreciates when its demand decreases or supply increases relative to other currencies. Now, what causes a currency to depreciate? See, firstly, if you have to talk about the supply, it is influenced by the country's monetary policy. So, a looser monetary policy increases the currency supply, leading to depreciation, while a tighter monetary policy reduces supply, causing appreciation. Then, if you have to talk about demand, it is driven by foreign interest in a country's goods and assets. So, a higher demand for exports and investments strengthens the currency, whereas the lower demand weakens it. Now, what could be the reasons behind the rupee's downfall? See, the short-term factors in the 2024, where the global investors are withdrawing funds from emerging markets like India due to monetary policy shifts and investing in advanced economies. And then the monetary policy amendments like the central banks worldwide are recalibrating policies after pandemic-induced tightening. So India's policies are perceived as less favorable compared to others. And with respect to long-term trends, the Reserve Bank of India has maintained a relatively loose monetary policy, resulting in higher inflation compared to US. And there is also high import dependency, where India's reliance on crude oil and gold increases the dollar demand, weakening the rupee. And lastly, insufficient exports fail to generate significant demand for the rupee. Now, what about the RBI's role with respect to it? See, the RBI uses its foreign exchange reserves to stabilize the rupee by selling the dollars. So, as of December 2024, India's forex reserves fell to $640 billion, which is an 8-month low from $700 billion in September. So, without RBI intervention, rupee depreciation would have been worse. Now, what are the implications of rupee depreciation? Firstly, the essential imports like crude oil become more expensive. Secondly, higher import costs contribute to domestic inflation. And lastly, depreciation can make Indian imports cheaper and more competitive globally, though structural issues limit the benefits. The next article says that Union Minister of Coal and Mines, Sri G. Kishan Reddy, will hold a strategic meeting tomorrow with Saudi Arabia's Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources in New Delhi. Know that the high level discussion will focus on enhancing cooperation in critical mineral sector and exploring new investment opportunities between the two nations. In this context, we'll talk about the critical minerals. See, critical minerals are those minerals which are essential for the economic development and national security of a country. See, a mineral is labeled as critical when the risk of supply shortage and associated impact on the economy is relatively higher than the other raw materials. So, the lack of availability of these minerals or even the concentration of existence, extraction, and processing of these minerals in few geographical locations may lead to supply chain vulnerability and disruption. Furthermore, the critical minerals are the foundation on which the modern technology is built. From solar panels to semiconductors, wind turbines to advanced batteries for storage and transportation, world needs critical minerals to build these products. So there is no energy transition without critical minerals, which is why the supply chain resilience has become an increasing priority for major economies. Significantly, India's future economic prosperity will depend on how well we can use our vast energy and mineral resources to play to our strengths and how well we can adopt to the follow the global market shift towards zero emissions. Know that India has become the newest partner in coveted mineral security partnership, which is an US initiative to bolster critical mineral supply chains. So here is a list of 30 critical minerals released by the government of India. The next article says that the support available to the languages notified as classical languages include awards in classical languages, centers of excellence for studies in classical languages, and creation of professional chairs in central universities. In this context, we'll talk about classical languages. See, 5 new classical languages were added to list, which are Marathi, Bengali, Assamese, Pali, and Prakrit. Before this, India had 6 classical languages, which include Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, Sanskrit, and Odia. Now, what will the classical tag mean for these languages? Officials say that the broader cultural and academic impact of this designation will extend nationally and internationally. So, the Ministry of Education takes steps to promote classical languages. Under this, 3 central universities were established in the year 2020 for the promotion of Sanskrit. Then, the Central Institute of Classical Tamil was set up in 2008 to facilitate translation of ancient Tamil texts and offer courses in Tamil. Furthermore, similar centers of excellence have also been set up for the study of Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, and Odia. Now, what are the latest criteria for the classical languages? See, the criteria now include firstly, high antiquity of early texts and recorded history of over a period of 1500 to 2000 years. Secondly, a body of ancient literature or texts which is considered a heritage by generations of speakers. Then thirdly, epigraphic and inscriptional evidence. Then fourthly, knowledge texts, especially prose texts in addition to the poetry. And lastly, that classical languages and literature could be distinct from its current form or could be discontinuous with later forms of its offshoots. Following this, the committee recommended the addition of these 5 new languages, the proposals for which had been with the center for some years. The last article of the day says that the Union Budget 2025-26 outlines a significant push towards the nuclear energy as part of India's long-term energy transition strategy. So the government has set up an ambitious target of 100 gigawatt nuclear power capacity by 2047, positioning nuclear energy as a major pillar in India's energy mix. This development aligns with the broader objectives of Viksit Bharat, ensuring energy reliability and reducing dependency on fossil fuels. In this context, we'll talk about the various related aspects. See, the objective of it is strengthening the nuclear energy as key pillar in India's long-term energy transition strategy. So, the target is to achieve 100 gigawatt nuclear power capacity by 2047. So, the focus areas are indigenous nuclear technology development, public-private collaborations, and infrastructure investments. Then we have the Bharat small reactors, which are 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors with a strong safety record. So they are designed to reduce the land requirements and can be deployed near industries as captive power plants. Then we have Bharat small modular reactors. where the capacity is less than 30 megawatt electric to 300 plus megawatt electric. So the key benefits are that it addresses the land constraints, enhances the grid stability by completing renewable energy, and supports India's net zero commitments under the Paris Agreement. So the government initiatives are to enhance a nuclear capacity, and the current capacity is 8,180 megawatt as of 30th January 2025. But the planned expansion by the year 2031-32 is 22,480 megawatt. Now, these are the upcoming and the ongoing nuclear projects in India, and the milestone achievement is that the Rajasthan Atomic Power Plant reached criticality on September 19th of 2024, marking controlled nuclear fission. And other recent developments in India's nuclear energy are new uranium deposits were found in Jaduguda mines, extending mine life by 50 plus years. So, in this video, we have discussed 10 articles which are important from the UPSC CSE Prelims perspective. We'll be back again with another video tomorrow. Thank you.